This is the Master Marketer Show, powered by Proofpoint Marketing. Each week, we explore the mindsets, skill sets, and tool sets the top B2B marketers use to drive results. Gain actionable insights, one masterful, revenue-generating success story at a time. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Master Marketer Podcast, where we talk about the mindset, skill sets, tool sets that drive results. And today we've got James Furbush with us, who is the VP of Marketing at Access One. James, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
We're excited to have you here, and we're excited to dive in. So one of the interesting things that I think a lot of people can relate to, James, is that you are this master marketer, but team of one. And, that's a huge mindset to kind of wrap. So, I mean, it's kind of a perfect segue here. Let's talk about the mindset. What kind of a mindset do you need if you are a team of one?
It's a great question. So I think for me, the biggest mindset you can have as a team of one is, I think honestly, just sort of having that sort of scrappy mentality. I think the hardest thing is, you really have no one to work with. Like, I don't want to say you don't have anyone to work with, because I've got salespeople and actually technically now after post acquisition, we're a team of three, but I think on like limited teams, you're really competing against better funded teams or people who, marketing teams where you've got people doing every function. And for me, it's really just having that mindset of, getting shit done in some ways. Because I have to wear all the hats, right? I've got to be the product marketer. I've got to be the event marketer. I've got to be the content guy, the demand gen guy, and on down and down and down. And so it's really just having that mindset of, I guess getting shit done, but like not letting, perfect be the enemy of good in some ways, right? It's like, I think you could perseverate and take forever to do blog posts or take forever to do just about anything. But as a team of one, it's better to just like push stuff out into the world and not stress too much about whether it's going to be the best thing ever. And really just kind of have that mindset of, throwing a lot of darts at the dartboard, I suppose, to kind of see what sticks and what will land with your audience.
So speaking of throwing a lot of darts at the dartboard, and you mentioned, you're the demand gen guy, you're the content guy. I mean, the thing that we want to focus in on specifically today is really to a certain extent your content strategy that you've implemented recently.
Sure.
Really, you and I spoke a little bit before this, and you mentioned, the need to punch above your weight class. So maybe set the stage for us a little bit, and then let's again kind of talk about mindsets around that, and kind of how and why you decided to do it.
Yeah. So for me, I am a content person. That's kind of like my marketing silo. If my career ever goes sideways, I will always have content to fall back on as my like thing that I have mastered pretty well. At Q Squared, so for the past 10 months at Q Squared, we'll go back to like post acquisition before we got acquired by Access One. But for me at Q Squared, my mindset going into my content strategy and really how that content would feed into kind of building and creating demand was, what are the things that I can do that, again, make us look like that we have a larger budget, or that we are a company, frankly, at Q Squared, like my budget was very tiny. I had probably $5,000 a month to spend on marketing, and that is like soup to nuts on everything. And so, at some companies that's a rounding error, right? I mean, people will lose that money in the couch cushions. And certainly I would think some of our, companies that we're competing against in the market, that would be the case. And so for me, it was, how can I take what I'm doing and create content that actually just looks like, I've got $5,000 in the, that I'm just throwing it away. For me, that was part of me why I decided to kind of do the podcast route was, I could be very creative. I could do it on the cheap relatively. And I could honestly cut it up and repurpose a 40-minute interview or 35-minute interview into like a million different assets. So for me, it's about creating something different, right? Kind of looking at the market, and frankly, it's really hard. Like Austin, a lot of our companies, we are touting the same, performance metrics improvements. A lot of the language is very much the same, and so it really becomes hard to stand out when you don't have a ton of money to throw at the problem. So for me, I think I just looked at the podcast, and having that be like sort of the foundational asset, like the big rock piece of content that was part of our strategy. It was gonna, I think, get us. It was gonna help nurture sales deals, so get sales members access to accounts that they might not have access to otherwise. That would be, one good thing. And it was a piece of content, the recorded interviews that I could use in a million different ways, very efficiently, to feed social media, to feed paid ads. And eventually, it could feed demand gen as well. If we needed to do like demand capture and, take those assets and repurpose them into a way that, was a gated thing. I thought it was going to give us foundationally more material to work with in order to do that long term. So for me, I mean, as someone who had never done a podcast before, I think it just it kind of seemed like a no-brainer, especially when I looked at like the market. Healthcare podcasts in general, I think are it's a lot of like doctor influencers, or it's like trade pubs who are doing paid, like they have a podcast, but honestly, it's just like a paid, media vehicle. So I honestly thought there was like pretty good opportunity to bring something different and unique to market. And that I also thought would be something that would help us stand out.
So I'm curious, jumping into the podcasting space, how did that play out within the organization? Because that's one of those where it's like, well, how are we going to measure it? Well, we don't know, right?
Well, and I would take that one step further and say, like, what was the mindset? Because it sounds like your mindset was, how do I maximize my budget? And in your words, punch above my weight class, show up looking, we've got the peacock feathers all flared out and we look like this big, mighty marketing organization.
Yeah.
But what was the mindset, when you brought that up to your colleagues or your bosses and say, hey, we're going to do a podcast? What was the mindset that you were up against?
So it would probably depend on who I was selling it to within the company. Fortunately, Q Squared at the time, we were only 15 people. So it was very small. And I worked with and I still work with a great colleague. He sort of has straddled his career in sales and marketing. This guy, Jeb Burrows, who right now is our head of business development. And he instantly got it. He's like, this is amazing. Like, if you can pull this off, like, this is going to be fantastic. I think he instantly saw, like, from a content engine perspective, from a sales nurture perspective, I mean, I think like he instantly got it. And so he was a huge help, like helping me sell it to the company. Because he was, he had been with Q Squared for about 3 years before I started. So he was kind of one of the early, first employees. So that was great, like finding that champion and having that champion who could help me sell it to our founders and senior leadership, I think was huge. The biggest thing was when I did it, I think people were a little bit skeptical. They were like, all right, we hired you and we're going to trust you. This is maybe outside of our comfort zone, but we're going to, we've hired you for a reason, and we'll put our trust in you. The funny thing is when I initially kind of rolled out like the editorial calendar, and I'm like, okay, like we've secured all these guests and da 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 da. And here's the thing. And I remember like my CEO was like, oh, like this feels like a lot of effort. Like I thought you were just going to do like one interview. And I was like, no, Bill, like it's a podcast, like it's an ongoing thing. Like once you get on that like hamster wheel, like there's no getting off. Like this is not just like one interview. This is like, if I had the budget, I would be doing this on a weekly basis. Maybe like,
Right.
I would be doing this as much as I could. My bandwidth is probably going to allow us to do like 2 a month, but like, we're going to start with like 2 a month. We're going to start with what I can do. But we're going to like crank on this because this is going to feed social. And then I think like eventually the light bulb went off when, eventually they started having acquisition talks, and the company who did acquire us, they were like, this podcasting you have is like really great. Like, how are you getting these guests? And so then I think like that was also like an external validation as well, that it was like, oh, holy shit. Like you're getting an hour time with like the CEO of Jefferson Health. You're getting an hour time with the CFO of so-and-so. And, the head of Rev, like we started like lining up like some pretty great guests. And I think then that's when like the flip switch, when they're like, oh yeah, like you're getting time with these like incredible accounts that like we're going after and trying to sell to.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're doing a thoughtful handoff to introduce that person to the salesperson. So now like they're getting a warm introduction if like they haven't been able to do that in the past. So I think like once they saw that plan start to play out, then I think it was a lot easier. I think they started to get that buy-in. One of our sales guys, came back, and we had another salesperson, David, who was like really great with like, let's get this person on. Like he obviously saw this as a way to like engage his accounts and like his territory. And so he was instrumental in like getting a lot of guests for the show. And he came back and he's like, man, I wish it was as easy to get someone to take a demo of our product as it is to get them to be on your podcast. And at the same time, and so like that's like that validation where it's like, look, no one wants to like be sold to, but as soon as you flip it to like invite them to be a guest on this show and be part of this experience and thing that we're building, we can then leverage that to eventually sell to them. And we've done that, right? Because then it's like, hey,
Right.
would you love to see what our product can do? Like, I'd love to just show you, love to get your feedback. And so then I think sales guys have then leveraged that in a way that's beneficial from them, for them. So it did take some time. It wasn't like an overnight, it wasn't an overnight thing. It wasn't an overnight success. And I don't think like people fully bought in right away, but I think, they hired me. I think they had the trust to do that. I think it helps that at the same time I was doing the podcast, I was also like, okay, guys, and I'm like doing LinkedIn ads to try to get you demos, and I'm doing, in-mail stuff and doing all these other things that like we're laying this foundation. But I think from the get-go, like I sold the founders that was like, look, you guys have not done any investments in marketing.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like a whole shit stuff that we got to do at the bottom of the pyramid, like before, like you're not even being indexed by Google. There were some like very basic things that like they just hadn't been doing. And so I think like going in from the get-go to be like, guys, we got like a 10-month ramp up. Like we're going to do ads and we're going to do all this stuff. But I think like I had that plan from the get-go of like, here's how we're going to ramp stuff up. I think that made it a little bit easier where it wasn't like they were immediately like, have you closed any deals attributed to the podcast, or have you like, it was like, no, because, we're doing all of this stuff. And if we do it all right, then like, yes, like long-term, 5 months from now or 4 months, like we're going to have that awareness. And I think like we will have created demand. And maybe we'll get a guest and like we'll close a deal as a result of that being on the podcast. But that's also like kind of in sales' hands. Like, we're
Right.
going to tee it up, and if they're good at their job and I'm good at my job, like, yeah, it'll all kind of come together. So I think I was like very clear about setting some of those expectations up front on like, I think just the work that we had to do in terms of like when you're starting from zero, there's like a whole lot of stuff that we needed to do, and I was kind of doing those things in parallel, and so I think because of that, it gave me like the bandwidth to like also have this like podcasting over here that they were kind of like willing to like let me run with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's two things from everything you said that I want to highlight from a mindset perspective. One is not your mindset, but the executive leadership mindset, which is I think it says a lot where somebody can say, "Hey, you know what? We hired you for a reason. We're going to trust you to do the thing that we hired you to do," right? Because there's a lot of this stuff out there about only work for the CEO who understands marketing. And it's like, I think you and I might have even exchanged some comments on
Yeah.
LinkedIn about this. It's like,
Yeah.
well, it doesn't have to be that. As long as the person that hires you, like you said, trusts you to do the thing they hired you to do, great. They don't need to understand it right away. They don't need to be the best marketer in the world. The other thing that I think is critical that you mentioned is you didn't just jump into the deep end, if you will, and said, okay, let's start a podcast without having anything else. You mentioned, no, let's take care of some of this low-hanging fruit first, and then have this kind of parallel work stream of we're gonna run some paid search ads, LinkedIn ads, whatever it was you guys were doing. Make sure the site's indexed and optimized, etc. Kind of capture the demand that exists as much as we can while we're building something else. Like get the base level of things going. I think a lot of organizations, especially what we talked about, like kind of team of one type thing, they're trying to do too many things and they jump into the podcast or the events or the whatever, and it's like they don't have anything else going, and it just takes too long for those things to really impact pipeline, because it does, right? That's a 3 to 6 month roadmap. And then at some point, someone's like, okay, where are my leads, or where's my pipeline? It's like, well, it's coming, I promise.
Yeah. Well, and for us too at Q Squared, like we had this other thing where it's like, do we even know how to like measure that stuff? Like, I don't know. We had like some RevOps challenges, like with that in and of itself. That's a whole other conversation. I think for me, like as a team of one, like my mindset to jumping into being a team of one was very much, I approached it like I knew that if I could like deliver wins for sales, in terms of like you're going out to prospects, like your deck that you're doing like doesn't look great. Like let's make you guys feel super confident that you're going to have like the best deck in the world. Let's get some customer testimonials so that we have solid, customer proof points and things like that. Like let's fix up the website so that if people do come to the site, they can book a demo very easily that gets automatically fed to that it's not going to get lost in like the email shuffle, that we can respond within 24 hours and things like that, and do some of those things. So I was my mindset in some ways, like from the beginning, was very much like deliver some solid key wins to your sales org and your sales leadership, so that you can get the buy-in down the road for some of the other stuff that you want to do. I mean, I didn't launch the podcast. It was probably, I think I was 3 months into the job. They hired me. I was 3 months in. We had, it was funny because this was back in 2021. And so this was still like weird COVID times. Like, should we meet up? Should we not meet up? And our head of sales, Peter, was like, we're going to have everyone to my house. We're going to like wear masks. We're going to like do like a mini sales kickoff, kind of thing. And so it wasn't until that July or whatever, like at the sales kickoff, when I like even presented like, okay, like now that we've got you guys in good shape for like when you have to go like nurture prospects, and we now have some good customer stories and all this stuff. I'm like, now we're going to like turn on the jet engines. We're going to like do this podcast and launch it. We're going to like do paid ads, and we're going to start to do like all these other things where we can now like really build demand and all that stuff. So yeah, my mindset was like deliver wins for sales so that they'll love you. And then hopefully that'll give me and it did, but give me the rope to, I feel confident that I could also say, and now we've got this podcast thing we're going to do, and that's going to be our content strategy and, this whole other thing. So,
well, I would love to talk about skill set, because you really shared a lot about the mindset, which is really great. And I think it's important when we start something new. And in this case, the podcast was very brand new for your company. I don't know if it was something that you had done in the past.
Never.
Right. So setting that having a mindset, communicating the objectives, communicating what people should be thinking about, like, hey, setting the expectation is really important. But then, we want to talk about skill set. You said right now that you had never done a podcast before.
Yeah.
So how did you level up your skills? What resources did you use? Tool sets is the next thing, so we'll talk about the tools that you use.
Yeah.
But skills, how did you go from, okay, my mindset is I need to deliver wins for my team, I'm a team of one, and I've got to produce content, and I've got to punch above my weight class, so we're going to start the podcast, to then skill set, how do I actually produce a podcast? So tell us a little bit about your journey to upskilling to be able to do this.
Yeah, I mean, I think I had like the fortunateness, I suppose, where, I'm on like LinkedIn marketing. I'm seeing like these other people I'm like podcasts, and my mindset is always, I think my entire life. And so I'm like, well, if so-and-so can do it, like how hard can it be? I could definitely figure that out. I think I just, I kind of talked to a lot of people, a lot of the skill set. My background is in journalism, right? So my background, my early career, and being a content marketer in some ways is a lot of doing interviews, talking to people, essentially, learning things and sharing it with other people. And so I've traditionally done that from a written word perspective, blog posts and guides and, reports and white papers and all that stuff. And so, but to me, I was kind of like, okay, well, this is basically just a recorded interview. And I've been fortunate where I've worked, at Athena Health, where a video and was a big part of our content strategy, because our head of, I learned under, a head of content, VP of content communications, who was very invested in video. I think he cut his teeth at like PBS, and doing like documentaries and things like that. So I got to see like uphand, like how you do like good interviews where you're, asking questions in a way that, translates well to video and audio and things like that. So for me, in those skill sets, it honestly was just, I think, taking the sort of interview skills and the prep skills of being a journalist and just applying it to a new medium. And so that was kind of the first thing was, okay, you've done this a million times before. The way you deliver it might be different, but when you go in to interview someone, you got to have all of your questions ready. You have to have all your research and background done. A lot of the new skill sets were, okay, but I want my guests to feel comfortable. So how do I be proactive enough to make sure that when my guest comes on the show, they're feeling like this is something that's putting them in a place to be successful, right? So being proactive and sending the guest questions ahead of time, making sure that they feel comfortable with the technology and the different stuff we're going to use to record the interview. So a lot of the skill sets we're honestly just developing. I'm not the most like proactive person. I think, as a journalist, sometimes we do fly by the seat of our pants a little bit. So a lot of it for me was kind of developing the skills to honestly set my guest up to feel comfortable and successful, that we're going to have a good conversation, that it feels natural, that they feel comfortable and at ease enough in some ways to not feel robotic and all of that stuff. So it was a little bit of just bringing that to a new medium, and I think it's been successful so far. But yeah, I mean, I'm still honestly learning in some ways on what makes a good podcast in terms of like a format or how I do that prep or how I kind of sequence the questions and things like that, or ask follow-ups. I think it's really just kind of developing those, and part of it is you have to just get into it in order to
Yeah.
like
Gotta get your reps in.
you got to get your reps in, right? Yeah, it's like it sounds bad, but no one's going to be good right out of the gate. And so I think having some good guests who are very talkative and could carry a lot of the early load, I think was something that I learned that was valuable early on, where I could just kind of like have them come on and ask that initial question and then like sit back and
Hey, that's what we're doing on the show here.
So speaking of getting good guests and skill sets, I think I'd love to hear about that. Like, how were you able to get the types of guests that you got?
I mean, so part of it happened where, my early career at marketing was at Athena Health, which is, in the healthcare technology space. I mean, it's a pretty big, well-known brand. It's like the equivalent of like working for Salesforce in some ways. Like it's just it's like a very well-known brand. Customers love it. And so when I was there, I mean, I was there for 4 or 5 years, and I just developed a huge network through content and all of that, because we were doing guest blogs and things like that. We had tons of events that I would get to go and meet people at and stuff like that. So I just had like a ton of good contacts. And then beyond that, like a lot of the marketers at Athena that I worked with have moved on to other companies, and I've stayed in touch with them. I mean, it's a really great community and family when you work there in some ways. And so almost from the get-go, I was able to tap into my existing network. And I just reached out to a ton of people, right? It's a lot of, in some ways, like building your own sales pipeline, like building a guest pipeline for a podcast. I set up like a little bit of like a Trello board, almost like as a CRM for like managing like my guest pipeline. We could talk about that in the tools section in a little bit. But I think I was fortunate enough where I just, from the moment I was like, I'm going to do a podcast, and from the moment I was like, this is not just going to be about like patient payments. We're going to take it up to make it more broadly about the patient experience in healthcare. That gave me access to a lot of potential guests and a lot of different avenues for how we could talk about it. So I think part of it was like I secured a couple of early guests for my days at Athena, and they were big enough names in the industry where I was then able to leverage their names to get more guests, right? So then when I went out to guests that I didn't know, it was like, hey, do you want to be on this podcast? Like we've had, person A, B, and C on there, the CEO of this health system and the CFO of this and the COO of, this. Just to create the illusion of like, this is something that you want to be a part of. And so a lot of it is, again, reading reading industry news. So you're kind of reading news and seeing who's quoted in articles or who is on doing, presentations in other at events and things like that. And then like following up on LinkedIn and just kind of doing sort of the typical journalist thing where you're reaching out and kind of figuring out how to get in touch with them and saying, hey, I'm doing this thing. Like, do you want to be a part of it? And making it feel like it's something that they want to be a part of. So that helped in a lot of ways for me. And then the ball just got rolling. Then like sales got into it, right? So then like all of a sudden, like in the company, it was like, then it wasn't just me recruiting. It was like I had 2 or 3 other people being like, well, we should get this person. We should get that person. And it's like, absolutely. Like, if you've got good guests, like reach out and make an introduction. Like I will take it from there.
Yeah.
And so then all of a sudden that just like, once the momentum started building where we had like a few early wins, thanks to my time at Athena Health. And like, I mean, when I say that I tapped into my own network, I mean, I was able to get like, we haven't secured it yet, but like I had a coworker, he is now the chief medical officer at like Walgreens. Right. And so like, I was able to like reach out to him and be like, Kevin, like I'm doing this podcast. And he's like, I want to be a part of it. Like probably got to jump through some hoops because I'm at Walgreens now and they're a Fortune 5 company and, you know, they've got PR. And he's like, we got to sell it to them because like they can get me on the Today Show, and no offense to you, but like my time is better spent like being on the Today Show with you know, Kathy Lee Griffin and whoever than it is to be, you know, spend an hour with you. But you know, again, like he's like, if we can make it work, we'll make it work.
Yeah.
But like then like you're able to use him and like these people like give that credibility. So I think, you know, what I would say to people who, if they want to start a podcast, like leverage sales, because sales are out talking to people. If you've got customer success, like leverage your customer success team, because you've got customers who frankly, that's an easy win. Like they're already a customer, right? So that is like your early easy win. If you can get customers to just be on your podcast, like they're already your ICP.
Yeah.
They already love your company and are doing business with you. So chances are very good that your customers, if you can be like, hey, we're doing this thing, do you want to be a part of it? It's probably a much easier yes. And then once you've got those wins, you know, sales can use that to, you know, get you some wins on their pipeline. And I think it builds from there. And then, you know, also like know your industry, right? It's like know who in your industry are saying interesting things. Probably one of the best guests I had, frankly, was a nurse who saw one of our ads on LinkedIn. And like, she reached out to me and was like, hey, I saw this thing. Like, this is super cool. Like, are like you doing a show for nurses? Like you're talking about the patient experience. Like, how do nurses factor into that? And I was like, honestly, Michelle, like, I love nurses. Nurses are at the heart of the patient experience. Like, I haven't really given it much thought though. Do you want to be on the show? And she's like, yes, like, absolutely. And she was one of the best guests we've had. And like, she kind of just saw an ad that I used to promote the show and then like reached out. And so I think there are like a million ways that like you could leverage to get guests. I think it's just, again, like how proactive and how creative do you want to be? And really most people I found when you ask them to want to be on a podcast, like they'll say yes. Like I think most people love being flattered if you are like, I want to hear what you have to say, like about your job. They are really more flattered than anything else, and will give you the time of day.
For sure. One follow-up question on the skill set front. So you mentioned that you were bringing in your peers in sales and other parts of the organization. What skill sets did you feel that you needed to train your colleagues, or were they asking you, hey, I want to learn about this, that, the other, you know, I want to get involved in this. Did you have to, you know, was there a lot of training or upskilling that you needed to do with your colleagues?
I'd say more like hand holding, you know, and part of it is like, right. So for them, they're like, if I reach out, like, how should I reach out? And it's like, I'll put together an email for you so that, you know, it's that, you know, you can tailor and make it sound like your own. Like, I'm not going to, you know, hold you to the fire that you have to send the exact thing that I write. But it's like, here's how I would pitch, like being on the show. So it was mostly hand holding more than it was like upselling or kind of doing some training and things like that. But again, you know, yeah, there's a certain level of like managing up and setting your colleagues up for success too, right? Like if they're going to take the time to reach out, you know, you want them to be in a position where they're going to be successful. So it's honestly just like really working with them to make sure like they have what they need. And a lot of that is like, here's how we message the show. Here's how we would write about it. Here are the guests that I think would be most relevant that we've had on that, you can leverage to make this person feel like they are a part of it. And then it's also like including them in the process as well, right? So it's, if they have prospects, they probably, I have one sales guy who wants to get FaceTime. So it's a good way for him to say hello. And so like figuring out how to, doing that a little bit. So I don't think it was necessarily like developing like a ton of new skills or doing all that, but I think it's mostly just trying to figure out the most effective way to do it and do it in a way that your teammates feel like it's a collaborative process that they're involved and it's not, not something that I am like, here's, being very prescriptive. I think just trying to be very collaborative instead of being very prescriptive in a lot of ways.
So let's talk about tool sets, because this isn't a new initiative that you were doing. Team of one, reiterating that point for our listeners. Now I understand that your team has expanded, but at the time when you were doing this, team of one. So talk us through, what were the tool sets? We talked mindset, we talked skill set. Now we want to know about the tool sets. What did you need that you didn't have, or what did you have that you were able to leverage?
Yeah. So, I mean, the cool thing about like doing a podcast too is, I mean, it's almost a little bit like marketing, right? It's like, how much do you want to spend? I mean, it depends. And I think like when I initially started figuring this out, I was like, okay, like we got Zoom, I got like AirPods, I can probably get away with that. But for me, like I also wanted it to sound somewhat professional. And so I did do a little bit of research on like podcasts, like recording apps or like recording studios. And there's probably a ton out there. StreamYard is one, obviously we're using, and but I did sort of do a little bit of research, and for me, the big thing that I wanted was something that could maybe help my audio sound good. And what I was worried about was that Zoom doesn't really have any features where if the audio or the internet like dies, like helping to overcome sort of that aspect of kind of the remote world that we were living in. So those were kind of like my big requirements, and I wanted to find a way to record that would kind of help make it easy, be easy for guests, easy for me, and give me some tools to make the audio and video look and sound pretty good. I ended up landing on Riverside FM, and I, forget the tier. They're kind of a product-led growth company, so they've got a couple different tiers. I ended up paying out of pocket. I think they have a free tier, but I ended up like paying for them, and that's been great. They record the audio kind of locally and then like upload it. And then they have some tools as well to like put together like from the video and audio files that get recorded, like the full 40-minute thing that you can do. So I started with Riverside as like my recording platform. Super easy to use, super easy to get started, not terribly expensive in the grand scheme of things. But just a lot of tools that I have been great. So that's been one tool that's been super effective to start with. So that's kind of like my foundational thing. Then the next tool that I use is Descript. So I will be an absolute champion for Descript. They don't pay me to say nice things about it, but I will say a million amazing things about Descript. Again, they have like a free tier, expensive tier, whatever. But Descript then has a bunch of tools that I use to make short clips with, to produce a transcript, to clean up the audio, and make it sound even more professional. And really to kind of do this like next level of spit and polish on the audio and video. And we can kind of go into more detail on that. But then Descript I'll use to kind of make probably like 3, short clips that I can use for social, and kind of the final tool or the final full video and audio show. And then for the short clips, then I kind of dump those into Canva, and I use Canva to kind of clean up. I know some people actually you can do the short clips right from the script, but I was already using Canva for like other design projects and different things. So it just became kind of my own workflow. It was just easy to, if I'm designing a PDF or slides or something, I'm already using Canva. So I'm just going to use that for video. And I would kind of create some templates in Canva. So once I upload the short clip, I can just easily like change some headlines and do very little manipulation, because once I've built this template, I can kind of use it 1,000 different for 1,000 different videos.
And I will interject here and say that the Canva video editing tool is pretty slick. I mean, I've been using Canva, I think, since it first came out. I'd like to think that I'm like, patient zero with Canva. And then when they started with the video, I'm like, wow, this is it's pretty darn good, I have to say. And you don't have to be a video editing whiz to make it look good,
No, I mean, the crazy thing too about Canva is if I wanted to even go, so like I was only focused on LinkedIn for like, I was like, we're focusing on LinkedIn. We're going to like build our LinkedIn presence there. And I suppose like YouTube as well, just because it's like the sort of video library and channel and all that.
Right.
But if I wanted to easily do start like a TikTok account or like Instagram, Canva makes it super easy to take like a video that you make a 1080 by 1080 and then just flip it to the layout for like a Reels or TikTok. And so if I was actually like even more maniacal than I was, I could then even like have launched an Instagram and TikTok and had probably been like all over the place and probably stretched myself like way too thin and like burnt out and wanted to die. But you could do that. Like if you were in that mindset, like, I mean, like, frankly, I have like kids and a family, so I'm not like burning the midnight oil. Like it's important to me to like get dinner on the table and do bath time and put them to like read books at bed. But if you're a single marketer who is like in your mid 20s and you're like, you don't have a family and other obligations, like hats off with Canva. Yeah. You could use that to like, as a team of one, a podcast, Canva, like now you've got like a TikTok account and Instagram, and you are like everywhere to everyone.
Yeah.
All over the place. It's unbelievable what that can do as a person with really no design or like no video editing experience, no design experience. I'm able to make stuff that I think looks pretty good. That's like on brand, like the right fonts, right colors, look good, sound good, and plays well. And I mean, yeah, it's unreal what they've, I think, in some ways created.
It's really democratized this idea of a creator economy. I mean, you just said it. It's on brand. You got the fonts, you got the colors. Now you drop in the video. And with one button, if you upgrade to the paid account with Canva, literally with one button, you can format it in just with one button. It will just spit out all these different formatting sizes. So you don't even have to do it. You don't even have to manually do it. It will do it for you. So it's
that I will have to look at because
upgrade.
No, I pay for Pro like Canva. Like an automatic. As soon as I started using it, it was like, this is a no brainer. I'm going to pay the $120 a year out of my own pocket for it.
Right.
But I didn't realize it has that. But that's a complete game changer if it can do that.
Oh yeah, it's right up at the top. I'll show you after the call. You say like, there's a drop down and you click multiple sizes. You click the sizes that you want, or you can input that, and then bam. And then all the different sizes will open up a new tab in your browser. And so you'll have that layout. Now you do have to finagle it a little bit. I'll be honest. You do have to kind of finesse it, because when it resizes, it doesn't have the same proportions sometimes. So you got to go in there and tweak a little bit, but it's super easy to do that. Yeah.
That's interesting. I'm going to bring us pretty much, I think, full circle back to mindsets really quick here. But everything we're talking about right now really gets at, Gabby, you mentioned democratize. I think really what's happening is, at one point, whatever, say 3-4 years ago, let's just say, you could differentiate yourself by the level of production, and you still can. Like, don't get me wrong, like you can really professionally produce your video, but that bar has gotten so much lower to be able to get really solid production quality. Where, like you said, it's a couple of cloud tools and a HD cam, and now there's 4K cams, and most people at this point, if they really want to, just hook up your phone for 4K, right? Like there's all sorts of apps out there that exist. You can get really high quality video. It's a $150 microphone. You can go a little more expensive if you want, right? It's not difficult to do high production. Then you pop it in, and as long as you have very basic skills, you can do some animation. It's on your in your videos, things like that, and you're done. So where I'm going with this is your content quality, the actual interview content, the questions you ask, the rapport you build with your guest, the entertainment value, maybe like any and all of those things. That's where it is, right? Like it's that you have to have that mindset where you're not gonna outproduce somebody, not really. At least the average person will.
I mean, not outproduce, but I think like in some ways you can. Like, I mean, I joke like one of our like demo video at Q Squared is I just did a screen recording. So our product is a mobile payment. So it send a text message with the healthcare bill, and then the bill has a payment button kind of just embedded with it, right? So I had the tech team just send me like a sample text with like a dummy bill and whatever, and I did a screen recording of like me on my phone getting the text, opening it, running through, and like paying for it in like 45 seconds. And then I took that screenshot and I like uploaded it to Canva, threw it on a branded color background with like 2 bullet points, and then picked some like, funky bass music to put like underneath it, I mean, and then like the production of it is not great, frankly. Like at Athena Health, if I had suggested like, here's what we should do for like a demo video, is like, we're going to do a screen recording of like on a phone, I would have gotten like laughed out of the room, because like they had a 7-person video production editing team. But I made that video in, I don't know, it took me like an afternoon to like pull that together, threw it up on YouTube. We were able to like upload it to like LinkedIn, and we like ran that as like bottom of the funnel LinkedIn ads, like, or top of the funnel, whatever. We just ran it as like LinkedIn ads, a video ad. And like it did really well, like to people to see that, and we're like, oh shit, like this is what that is, and like here are the 3 big like selling points of it, like right in one thing. The production of that, Mike, is not good, but the content is, and I just feel like in the last like couple of years, like there have been so many tools that have come out that have allowed small teams or teams to do more with less than there ever has before in marketing. If you had told me, when I started my marketing career like 7 years ago, 8 years ago, or whatever, that like I would essentially gotten to a place where like I could run almost like a full-fledged like marketing program that we were like doing at Athena Health with like very little budget and one person, I would have like been like, no way. But because of the way that the dynamics have changed, where it's like so focused on content and pushing that content out into the world and hoping, building an audience and all that stuff, like, smaller teams, if they just have like an ounce of creativity and know-how and, like chutzpah to like just get some shit done, this is like the best time to be a marketer, where you can get more done with less than like ever before.
Well, and we're at this place where it's like we can do it now, right? It's one of those where it becomes more and more saturated. So we're seeing it as more and more content gets created. Now it's like, okay, well, now we got to level up. What's the next level?
Yeah.
How do I get better quality with the same volume, and et cetera, et cetera?
Well, and I think it's also a good way, a good like proof of concept. You could take that very basic, kind of rudimentary video, put it out there, proof of concept. Oh yeah, people, it's converting, we're getting, and then you can take that idea, give it to your external video partners, or if you have
Yeah.
a large department with video and creative and everything, you could say, hey, look, we tested this in market, we have a good feeling about it, can we take this and blow it up and do the whole production and everything. I think that's what these tools allow us to do as marketers is, be nimble, get crafty, put some things out there, and then test and learn, and then take that and then do it better. That's the biggest thing that I love about being a marketer, is that you have permission to do something, put it out there, and then make it better. People expect that. People expect that whatever you put out there today is going to end up being better tomorrow. And it's going to be even better the day after. And I think that's just a universal um, truth of being in marketing is, oh, you did a nice thing. Oh, good job. But you're going to come back next year and it's going to be even better. And we're going to be right here waiting for you. And
it's gonna drive more revenue.
and it's good, right? And that's what I love. I think that's what I love more than anything about being in marketing, is that there is this just understanding that it's going to be better. Whatever, even if you spent the 5 whatever thousand, 10,000, 25,000, whatever it was you spent, you can always make it better.
No, I 100% agree. Because again, like I think with marketing, it's like it's that ongoing conversation that you're having, whether it's through ads or through content or whatever. And those are always being sort of tweaked and played with and improved upon, or you're learning stuff and kind of trying to figure out, is this even worth optimizing? Have we optimized this the most we possibly can? And it's like for us, it was funny. It's like at Athena where we had a newsletter and it was really read and all this whole thing, and we eventually came to the conclusion. We were spending so much time like worried about like the subject line. Like we'd send the newsletter with the subject line and we'd like sweat over, and we got to a point where we just realized that it actually didn't matter, that like if the subject line was like new from Athena Health, that was just as good as like whatever and so we just stopped wasting time on that, because it didn't actually improve the results of like that program. And so, yeah, I mean, I think like that sort of constant tweaking and experimenting, I mean, it's not for everybody, but like, I mean, I think for a lot of modern marketers, I mean, it's like trying to solve a puzzle that can't really be solved, which is kind of like the fun thing for me in some ways.
Yeah. We talked mindset, skill set, tool set. Now let's hear about the results. So you've got this podcast going, James. Tell us, what has it done for you so far and for your company?
I'd like to think it played a small part in us getting acquired. So we, in mid-December, were acquired by a larger patient financing company in the space called Access One. And I think, obviously that was a really great sort of exit and end for the founders, the people who started the company. I mean, they put 4 or 5 years of really hard, dedicated work into sort of building something great. And, not every company gets to that point. And so I think, super happy for them to have such a great exit. And I'd like to think that a lot of the work that we did on sort of the branding and over the kind of 10 months, especially with the podcast, like helped play a role in sort of that successful exit. So I like to hang my head on that. The great thing is that we're going to get to see, now that we're under the Access One banner, the podcast is not going away. We're going to kind of get ready to revamp it under the Access One brand. And so now we're going to get to see, with a longer runway, just kind of what it can kind of do. So I'm excited to see what results beyond kind of the small role it probably played in sort of that successful exit had. But yeah, I mean, I think results wise, it'll be, I'm excited to see its impact on, can it have an impact on funnel and demand and all of, revenue and all of those things as well. I'm kind of excited to find that out this year.
I mean, you mentioned you were using some of the creative for some of the video for ads and things like that. Is that driven any impact from a pipeline perspective?
So not so much at Q Squared. So frankly, I think we had a lot of good awareness, but I think I did sort of one campaign where I just kind of botched frankly, I failed miserably at sort of the conversion and having it go from like the LinkedIn to a place to convert them on our stuff. So that's my bad. That's like a good learning lesson for me. But no, I mean, as far as that goes, I mean, I think frankly, at Q Squared, we were flying a little bit by the seat of our pants. We were like definitely not that sophisticated in terms of like that full like RevOps, attribution, kind of humming in the background. I think we would have gotten to that place, had we stayed sort of independent. I think we would have sort of built that this year. Would have been a huge priority to kind of figure that out. But for me, it was a little bit freeing because I knew that we just had to, drive awareness in some ways. Like our biggest enemy was that not enough people knew who we are and what we did. So that was a little bit freeing where I didn't necessarily have to do ads and things that were so focused on like converting and I could just kind of like focus on like driving awareness and stuff like that. So, but I do like to think like I'll take the one guest when I did do some ads for the podcast that I was able to convert a guest to be on the show. It's not going to lead to business, certainly, but like the fact that someone saw an ad and reached out and like wanted to then end up becoming a guest on the show, I'll hang my hat on that. That like we were able to kind of convert that. I think that's like a pretty cool indication of like using that content as ads like can definitely work to like drive awareness and get people to engage and kind of create a little bit of a different inbound model than what most people are kind of used to.
I think it's time for the lightning round, Mike. What do you think?
I agree.
Let's do it.
I'm so nervous.
Nothing to be nervous about. This is all easy stuff. So James, what is the main KPI you use to evaluate marketing success?
So at Q Squared, I was basically doing inbound demo requests was so basically growing traffic as the leading indicator, and then the month over month number of inbound demo requests that we were getting.
What is a new strategy or tactic you're looking forward to testing out this year?
So this year, I am looking forward to. That's a great question. I think like having the resources to be in a place where I feel like I can do that. One thing that I'm thinking about doing is is how can I like repackage the podcast content into a way that, we can use as a lead magnet. So I think actually there's a company called Sales Whale where I took this idea from, they had this thing where they were doing interviews and then they packaged it up as like a master class, and they would call it like, come to our master class. And so I'm excited about taking the podcast and seeing if I can use it in a different way as like a pure kind of lead magnet type activity. Because I do think at Access One, their main KPI is like marketing qualified leads. And so thinking about how I can take sort of what we're already doing on a content, but then like how I can use that to drive, kind of more demand capture in a kind of fun way that isn't like a webinar or something else that like most people might be sort of used to at this point. So.
Makes sense. What is your least favorite business word or phrase?
Oh boy. Oh God. Well, so I'm gonna go a little bit of an opposite way. I actually really like bad business jargon. And I just love how bad it is. I mean, everything from let's put a pin
So
in
what's
it.
your favorite? What's your favorite piece of business jargon?
Yeah. I mean, I think definitely let's circle back. Probably the asshole in me, my most favorite is when I get to send an email that's per my previous email. And it's just I'm just forwarding the answer to that's just see 3 emails down if you read my email. So that's probably my most favorite, is just being able to have that sort of passive aggressive business jerk come out. But I love everything about bad business jargon. I love how it's just become its own thing unto itself. And and I just my wife and I, we love to make fun of it. We now use it at our home. We run our company, our family meetings
at the dinner table. Let me circle back to you on that.
I'm oh, our daughter has a. Let me circle back if I can. Let's put a pin in that discussion.
Has your daughter started using these terms or not
I can
yet?
only hope. One day I can only hope. I will know that I have done my job well when my daughter will look at me and say, "Dad, let's take this offline for later discussion."
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Yeah, family QBRs, and we haven't gotten to the place where we're doing 360 reviews with my daughter yet. But I do think she's getting old enough where we should start to. We're deciding whether we want to do year-end 360 reviews, or if we want to coach her up in the moment. It's a little bit hard to know how we want to approach that.
Well, we have a 6-year-old daughter who we always joke and say that she's going to be an FBI negotiator one day, because she's really good at negotiation. When you figure out your strategy, tell us so that we can, we want to take some notes from you on this.
That's amazing. That's a good. I mean, it's a good. I've been trying to work on that with my daughter, negotiation skills, but also frankly, advocating. I tell this to her all the time. You have to advocate for yourself. No one's going to advocate for you like you will. And I feel I've tried to instill that in her from the get-go. If you need something, you have to be able to speak up. You got to be able to unfortunately, it's worked a little too well.
Just it's funny you bring that up. We're taking this on a total tangent, but
that's okay.
I think it was yesterday morning. I was taking her to school. I usually do drop off, and she wanted me to look up a song on Spotify, and I just really didn't want to. I'm like, no, I don't think it's gonna work. I'm not gonna be able to find it. She's like, well, Papa, you don't know. You won't know until you try. I was like, you're right. I won't. I guess we're gonna give it a go.
I've had to do that too, where I'm like, ugh, the Bluetooth. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on, but it won't connect to the thing, so I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You can't listen to Kids Bop 36.
Yeah. That's what I say in my car, because I don't know, for some reason I do struggle with connecting pairing my device to my car. Don't ask. But
Bluetooth sucks. It's not your fault.
Yeah.
Bluetooth is literally the worst.
And our daughter got into this whole Encanto, don't talk about Bruno and this and that. So whenever we would drive my car, we'd be like, oh, sorry, we can't connect Spotify. Well, lo and behold, Kiss KIIS or whatever the heck, the Kiss 95 station, whatever the freak station it was.
Yeah.
Now they're playing Bruno on the radio. So now you can't get away from it. Now we can't, and now she gets
Everyone's talking about Bruno now.
She's like, oh, well, but it was on the radio the last time. I'm like, well, I just don't know when it's gonna come again.
The best is like having to explain what the radio is to like a 5-year-old, because like they don't understand. She'll be like, oh, we're listening to the radio, like, can you just like pick the songs for me? And I'm like,
right.
No, dude, that's like the radio, that's not how it works. Like, you just have to listen to what they play for you. And like they just
explaining
don't
live anything.
Like,
I remember
growing up in a world where you all your media consumption is like on demand Netflix and Spotify. They have no concept of like
analog media, right?
I tried to explain to her the other day like about payphones.
Oh my God.
And it like just melted her brain. It was like you had to put a quarter in a phone in the mall. What's a mall? Like, did you have to call Amazon? And it was like, no, there was like this big building with stores that you had to go to buy stuff. And yeah, it's
kids these days, I tell you.
Days. But,
yep. All right.
Mike, you skipped over one of these, or I don't know if you
I did not.
It, but, oh, you did not. Okay.
We're still going.
Sorry.
So where did we leave off? Favorite business or marketing book?
Ooh. That's a good one. I will say it's not necessarily a specific marketing book, because as you know, as parents, you don't really actually get to read on your own. I mostly just read One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish. But I will say, for me, it comes back to like writing. So like Strunk and White. So E.B. White wrote a book on writing back in the 70s. So E.B. White he wrote Charlotte's Web, and he is like, if you read any of his books, like you're like, man, like this dude could write. He's so succinct. His sentences are like perfect. I mean, it is like just go pick up Charlotte's Web and like just dip yourself in his language and how economical it is. But he wrote a book on writing. It was like his writing tips for like how to write really well. And he wrote it with one of his professors when he was teaching. He was a professor at Cornell, and there was another professor who helped write it with him. This guy Strunk, I don't know his name. He's not really important because E.B. White is the man. But he's got this book, and so Strunk and White, it's like just this famous book on writing. I turn to that probably once a year, just to like breathe in the knowledge that he kind of shares on how to write really well. So I come back to that. And then Eat, Shoots, and Leaves is another good book on writing. I really like Stephen King's book on writing. I forget the name of it, but that's another one. So probably a lot of like the books that I turn to are mostly like writing based on like how to just be really top notch. But then I've started to dip my toes into marketing books. I'm reading Obviously Awesome by April Dunford right now, and like positioning. So trying to like break out of my cocoon and do that. So I'm going through that right now, and that's really good. I mean, didn't really know much about positioning before reading it. So like, that's been kind of really interesting, like how foundational, like in terms of like marketing, that is, for like your product and company and all of that. So that's been really good. So I'd say Obviously Awesome because I'm reading it right now, and then Strunk and White because it's like an OG, and it's no matter what anyone says, it'll definitely help with copywriting or blog posts or anything that you got to do.
Awesome.
I have to add that one to the list.
Yeah.
What is a marketing best practice that you hate or that you think needs to go?
That is, I think being so KPI driven in some ways, like I think like having so much data is obviously good as far as like, being data driven and performance driven and all that. But I do think to some degree, like you can overly kill yourself where you're like testing, A/B testing this and that, and seeing which one wins. And like I do think in some ways having so much access to data, I mean, it's good and it's bad. And I think sort of that best practice of like relying so heavily on it, where you're taking a little bit of the art and fun out of it. Like, I mean, some of the best marketing stuff that happens is because someone just said, fuck it, let's throw this against the wall and see what happens. And kind of create something fun and memorable. And maybe they wouldn't have done that if they were being so, driven by kind of the metrics and the leading indicators and the this, that, and the other thing. So for me, I think that would be kind of the big one. It's okay to have a little bit of fun and maybe not have an ROI attached to everything you do. I think, part of it is, I think the having the ROI and the this, that, and the other thing is, has been a crutch for a lack of being able to like manage up and sell, right? So like internally selling your programs and your different stuff, like falling back on ROI, I think sometimes has become a crutch for like the lack of being able to like, dude, if you got to sell something to the CEO, like sometimes there is no ROI, but you still got to be able to sell it, or manage up or convince someone that it's like worth trying. And sometimes there's no like ROI or hard numbers that can be attached to something to justify doing it. So,
right.
Yeah, for sure. I think what we talk about this a lot internally, which is there's this over reliance on the quantitative side of things. And I think it's that qualitative where, you might not have direct attribution, but there are other ways to measure and other ways to understand whether something you're doing is being effective or not.
totally.
I think it sounds like that's what you're talking about.
I mean, that was so much more succinct and well put than I clearly just said, but yeah, that's like to a T. That's what I was trying to get at. Yeah.
We do bonus questions.
Yes.
Bonus
questions. So tell us something. What's something about you that most wouldn't know?
Oh God. I mean, I'm a pretty like open book. I think there isn't anything. I think if you just know me from LinkedIn, I would say the one thing that is surprising to people is I like hate most people, but like people tend to really like me. And it's like this weird, I remember.
Is it weird that I can relate?
Yeah, like it's I don't know if that makes me like more of like a cat than a dog or something, but I remember one of my coworkers at a previous job was like, "Man, James, I was so intimidated by you for like the first 6 months." I'd be like, "Why? What?" Like I'm like the nicest, easiest going person, and she just, "Well, you just like never talk to me," and I'm like, "Well, I mean, I didn't have a reason to. Like, why would I? Like." I'm not going to go out of my way to be nice to, just because you're my coworker. But yeah, so I think that's kind of is like me in a nutshell. Like I am like I can be kind of like very hard to read sometimes. But I mean, most people end up I am a people person, and most people end up like loving me quite a bit, even if I'm generally like an introvert and like. Just generally don't want to have to deal with people on a daily basis. So
fair enough.
That's a good one. I don't know. I mean, I like hiking. That's like, but you can tell that from my LinkedIn.
All right. I have a question for you here, James, because in your bio, you said that you have a lot of opinions on things like coffee, beer, and music.
Sure.
So I want to hear some of those opinions. What are your opinions on coffee, beer, and music?
That's a lot of opinions. You got to pick one.
Yeah, I'm very opinionated, but they're all not strongly held.
Okay.
So what I tell people is I'm not like how like there are some like craft beer people that like you'll go and they're like, I'm not drinking Bud Light. Like, I gotta go. Like, it's like, dude, it's like we're at a party. Like, we're drinking Bud Light. Like, just knock it off. So I am not like a jerk about my opinions where, some people are like, I'm not drinking Starbucks or like Dunkin' Donuts. I will, but if you're at my house, like I'm definitely making you like pour over coffee in my Chemex with my gooseneck kettle that's been imported from Japan, and I've got the coffee scale, and and it's going to be all on point with that whole thing. So yeah, I like, it's like, especially in the last 2 years where you got to find the little ways to like enjoy your life and treat yourself, and so I think like, sometimes like that morning coffee ritual has been one of it. So yeah, I definitely enjoy a good like single origin pour over cup of coffee. Yeah, for craft beer, beer again, like I worked at Lord Hobo, and so I'm definitely like a kind of craft beer person. In Massachusetts, we have a ton of like exceptional breweries. But yeah, I mean, I am more than happy to drink, Miller High Life and the champagne of beers, and as much as I am going out to find like, paying $30 for like a 4-pack of something, which can get a little bit absurd in the beer scene. And then as far as music, I mean, yeah, I used to go to concerts a lot, but I mean, it's been 2 years. I think the last concert I went to was I went and saw Carly Rae Jepsen at the Massachusetts State Fair, and that's like the last concert I went to before the pandemic. And part of me just thinks like I should just go out on that high note and like never go to another concert ever again. Like just not even bother trying to one up that, because that's going to be a hard one to top. So
Well, I don't know if you're a big Beatles fan. I'm a huge Beatles fan, and Paul McCartney's on tour right now.
no,
Yes, and he's coming to Boston. He's going to be in Boston.
yeah, he's playing Fenway Park, and
Fenway Park.
so
Fenway Park.
I'm having a hard time. So like my dad is like super Beatles. I mean, that's like all he listens to.
Yeah.
Just about. And so like I've been dipped in the religion of the
Beatles.
Fab Four. And
Yeah.
so part of me is like, I'm kind of wondering, it's my dad's 75th birthday this year, and I'm kind of wondering if I should try to get some like Paul McCartney tickets at Fenway, but he's got some health issues, so it's a little bit like, is he even up for that? Like that might be like worth more trouble than it's worth. But
Yeah.
but that would be yeah. I mean, some of those old timers, dude. I hear Paul McCartney still puts on a mean show.
I it's my bucket list dream item to be able to see the two remaining Beatles in concert. So Ringo and Sir Paul. Our daughter got indoctrinated to the Beatles too, and she loves the Beatles. When she was about 3-ish, 2-ish, 3-ish, she knew who each of the Beatles were. She could pick them up in a video, like in a picture. She could see, oh yeah, that's Paul, George, she knew. And then she has a very good ear for music, and she would listen to their catalog and know who was singing.
That's impressive.
Right? I feel like I did my job as a mom at that point.
I think you could just like retire, just like hang out like and just like call it, just like walk out, leave Mike with the kids, like you've done your job.
I did it. Good luck. The rest is on you.
So are you gonna go see, or are you gonna try to see?
I would love to. The problem is, like, we have I was just looking at our calendar. We have an incredibly busy spring and summer with travel. We have a lot of business travel and personal travel. And I wish he was coming to Chicago.
Yeah, he's not coming anywhere close, which is weird.
He's not anywhere near the Midwest. We're based in the Twin Cities, so.
Which is surprising that he's not playing like I would think like Chicago,
right? Wrigley Field.
Yeah, the only thing in the middle of the country. I mean, well, it's weird. You said he's doing something in Tennessee, and then like Dallas, Fort Worth, which that one makes sense, but
yeah. So I don't know, James. We have a busy. Our 5-year Proofpoint anniversary is in June, and we have a big shindig happening in the Twin Cities in June. And so his tour is like right in smack dab in the middle of all this travel and things that we have going on. So, but I'm also kind of thinking to myself, I don't know how many more opportunities I'm going to have to be able to see a Beatle alive. So I don't know.
Very few. And I will say, like, it's so easy to talk yourself out of it.
I know.
But I mean, he might not do that many more tours. I mean, because he's got to be 80,
he's in his 80s, I believe.
right? And I just think about this too, like all the concerts I never went to, and then like it's just gone. I made the effort to go see Paul Simon on his final tour, and I gotta say, like that, I mean, was pretty spectacular. I mean, he literally played like all his hits, and you're like, oh my god, this guy has like one fucking bop after another. And I will not forget that show. And so even like, yeah, like a Paul McCartney, like sometimes you just gotta like talk yourself into it more than talk yourself out of it.
I know.
Especially if like you are, I mean, as you can see it, like you are, I mean, I don't think Ringo tours at all.
No. At least he hasn't in a really long time. Okay, Mike, you know what to get me for my birthday, then, it's coming up.
And I think, again, fly into somewhere, you can, if he's playing like Denver, what's that, like a hour and a half flight from where you're at?
Though.
Like,
that's the weird thing. He's pretty much either East Coast or West Coast.
Yeah.
Other than like, I think one in Tennessee, you said.
Tennessee, Texas, and then California, Boston, Maryland area. So I don't know. We'll see, James. It's on my bucket list for sure.
I mean, here's the thing, if it's on your bucket list, you kind of just have to do it.
I know.
And we're not going to try to talk you into,
you have to talk Mike into it, not me. I'm ready to go. It's Mike. No. Mike's holding me back.
No, this is not, listen, you're your own woman, and you're clearly can make decisions on your own that impact your life.
Right.
And so like, while Mike may have a say in it, like the final arbiter is you, and like what you want to, when you're dying, are you going to remember whatever, or are you going to remember that like you didn't go see Paul McCartney when he was on tour? And chances are good that you're going to remember Paul McCartney if you're as big as a Beatle fan as you are, and especially if it's on your bucket list, right?
Right.
I had this like weird thing on my bucket list, which I got to check off. So this thing on my bucket list was actually going to see a concert while I was traveling so this is going to be like a really weird bucket list. So this is actually kind of getting to like your first question, but it was, my bucket list was like, I want to go to a concert with like an artist that I love while I'm traveling in a foreign country, but then like find out the concert is like that day and I've got to like just go to the concert and whatever.
That's like a very, very specific thing. Very specific.
Yeah, because when I was traveling in Europe, I tried to go see Neil Young when he was in France. I was like somewhere close by, and I was like, oh, I want to go see Neil Young. Like, we should go to this concert, and I couldn't make it happen. And after that, I was like, man, it would be really cool to like be traveling in a foreign country and like get to see like a concert, like a big concert that you really love. And so I did get to check that off my bucket list. I was in New Zealand back in 2013. I'm a huge Nico Case fan. I don't know if you guys know her or listen to her at all.
No.
And she's absolutely spectacular. And I was like looking at, we like landed in New Zealand. We were like in Wellington, and they were having this big arts festival with a lot of concerts around the thing. And I was like, oh, holy shit. Like Nico Case is playing at this like bar down the street, like from the hotel and I'm like, talked to my wife. I was like, do you want to go see like Nico Case tonight? And she was like, yes. And like, we were able to get tickets and like kind of go see this artist that we both love quite a bit. And it was the first time we had saw her like in this little, small auditorium in the middle of New Zealand. And so I got to check that off, and that's a story I tell, and it's something I will never forget. And my point is that like,
I know. Okay.
No regrets.
No regrets.
You only have one life, and if it's meant to be with Paul McCartney, you got to make it happen no matter what.
I love it. I love it. I think we need to have another podcast that's just like marketers and music, talking to marketers that love music, because you're not the first person that we get on the show and then we just go on a rant about music. And I think there's something there. So our next podcast will have to be, talking marketers and music or something like that. Marketers, coffee, and music. I don't know. We'll have to see about that.
I like the angle as like a second show.
Oh, we have like 3 shows. My God, I don't even know. It'll be like a 4th show at this point.
I mean, just stash it away, right? It's like, become
Yeah.
a media company and all that. So
Who knows? Maybe.
we could eat hot wings while we're talking about music. And
Did somebody just do some weird hot wings thing?
I don't.
I think it was
that
the guys at Bomb Bomb.
Bomb Bomb did something that was
Okay.
kind of like hilarious. Well, James, it was such a pleasure to have you on the show today. I think we could have easily gone on for like another.
oh,
You
God
guys
man.
could have just geeked out about Paul
We could
McCartney
have
for the next hour.
geeked out for sure. I would have loved that. But thank you so much for joining us on the Master Marketer Show. How can people get a hold of you if they want to talk podcast or marketing or music?
Slide into my DMs on LinkedIn, right? I think
That's what the young kids say,
I
right?
think that's what the young kids say.
Right.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I don't have like TikTok. I am on the gram. I do carrier pigeons and smoke signals as well, but that's just for the people who really love me. But yeah, definitely LinkedIn. I think it's probably just the best, I'm happy to connect with anyone. Just reach out and say hi.
Awesome. Well, James, we will slide into your DMs and talk about music any day. And again, thank you so much for being on the show. We loved it.
Guys, thanks for having me. This was a blast.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Master Marketer Show. We'll be back next week with more B2B marketing success stories. Visit our website, www.proofpoint.marketing, for the full episode library, complete with show notes, guides, templates, and more. Make sure to follow Proofpoint Marketing on LinkedIn and YouTube so you never miss an episode. Listen every Wednesday wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time.